Ladies and gentlemen, laziness is not just a habit, it's a silent thief of potential. Every moment you hesitate, every task you postpone, you give away a part of yourself to inaction. But here's the truth: the work you have to do is not waiting for the perfect moment, it is waiting for you. The first step to overcoming laziness is understanding why you do what you do. When you have a purpose, when you see the meaning behind your efforts, action becomes natural. Without a reason, even the smallest task feels heavy. Ask yourself, what will your work create? Who will it impact? When you find your why, laziness loses its power. Next, understand that action doesn't need to be monumental. Change doesn't come from one heroic effort. It comes from small, consistent steps. One task completed today is better than 10 planned for tomorrow. Break your work into achievable steps and celebrate every small victory. This is how momentum grows. Now, consider the cost of inaction. Every day spent idle is a day lost. Lost growth, lost opportunity, lost mastery. It's not fear that should push you, it's clarity, the clarity that every small action matters. Every minute you invest builds the life you want. Every minute wasted moves you further away from it. Remember this: ownership is power. Laziness thrives when we blame distractions, tiredness, or circumstance. But the truth is, your actions are your responsibility. You cannot wait for someone else to push you, to motivate you, or to make the work meaningful. Only you can choose to rise, to start, and to keep moving. So, kill your laziness, not because someone told you to, not because it's expected, but because the work before you is the gateway to your growth, your dreams, and your legacy. Start now, take one step, then another. Momentum will follow, and laziness will vanish, not as a distant goal, but as a choice you refuse to make again. Understanding why you do what you do is the single most powerful antidote to laziness. Laziness is rarely about lack of energy. It is often a symptom of unclear purpose or disconnected motivation. When we wake up each day without a clear understanding of why we need to act, every task, no matter how small, can feel burdensome. Why? Because the human brain craves meaning. Our minds are wired to seek significance, to link action to result, to connect effort to outcome. Without this connection, work feels like punishment, and procrastination becomes a tempting escape. Knowing your why transforms the mental landscape. A task that once seemed mundane suddenly gains meaning. Washing the dishes is no longer just cleaning. It becomes a small act contributing to a well-organized, healthy home. Studying for an exam isn't simply memorization. It's a step toward the career, freedom, and expertise you desire. When purpose exists, effort aligns naturally because the brain sees the value in what you are doing. Motivation shifts from external factors, like rewards or praise, to internal conviction, a personal commitment that sustains action even when energy is low. Defining your why is not an abstract exercise. It requires self-reflection. Ask yourself questions like, why is this goal important to me? Who does it impact? What will my life look like if I achieve it? What will I lose if I do not? These questions are not about immediate results. They are about long-term alignment. Humans are forward-looking creatures, but we often fail to connect daily actions to future consequences. Without seeing the link, laziness fills the gap, whispering that the work can wait. The clarity of why bridges the present and the future, turning tasks into stepping stones rather than obstacles. It's important to recognize that why operates on multiple levels. There is the immediate why for daily motivation, the reason you get out of bed, the purpose behind a single task. There is also the larger, overarching why that defines your personal mission and direction in life. The two are interconnected. When the broader purpose is clear, daily actions feel meaningful. For instance, if your overarching why is to build a life of independence and security, doing small tasks such as budgeting, studying, or networking is no longer optional. It becomes essential. Laziness loses its grip because each action is a deliberate contribution to a bigger vision. Your why is unique to you. It cannot be borrowed from someone else, and it cannot rely solely on external approval. Society, parents, peers, or bosses can influence behavior, but lasting motivation comes from understanding your personal reasoning, the values and principles that resonate deep within you. This internal why creates resilience. It allows you to act even when conditions are not ideal, when energy is low, or when external rewards are absent. People who rely on external motivation alone are vulnerable to distraction and fatigue. People who operate from their internal why are consistently proactive because they have discovered a reason that transcends convenience. Another crucial aspect of starting with why is that it helps prioritize effort. Laziness often emerges from feeling overwhelmed. We see a long to-do list and freeze because everything seems equally urgent or important. When we understand the why, we gain perspective. Tasks can be evaluated based on their alignment with purpose. Some actions take precedence, others can be deferred, and the mental burden of everything at once disappears. Prioritization guided by purpose is a natural, almost effortless process. It channels energy toward what truly matters, making inaction less likely. The why is a source of accountability. When you have a clear reason for your work, you measure progress not just by output, but by alignment with your purpose. Laziness thrives in ambiguity, where there is no standard for measuring value. But when why is defined, every delay, every avoidance, becomes a conscious choice with consequences. Awareness of these consequences strengthens commitment and activates the natural human drive to achieve, contribute, and grow. Understanding why you act is not a one-time discovery. It is a continuous process of reflection and adjustment. As circumstances, goals, and personal values evolve, so too must the why. Regularly revisiting and refining, it ensures that effort remains aligned with meaningful outcomes. When laziness creeps in, reconnecting with why reignites motivation, transforming inertia into purposeful action, hesitation into decisive steps, and ordinary tasks into building blocks of a life that matters. Overcoming laziness is rarely about sudden bursts of effort or dramatic transformations. It is about building momentum through small, consistent steps. Human behavior is heavily influenced by habit and repetition. The brain is wired to conserve energy, which is why massive tasks can feel overwhelming and trigger procrastination. When we attempt to tackle everything at once, we face mental resistance, self-doubt, and fatigue. Breaking tasks into smaller, manageable actions reduces this resistance. It transforms daunting challenges into achievable, incremental steps that gradually build progress. Each small step completed reinforces a sense of accomplishment, creating a positive feedback loop that motivates further action. Consistency is more important than intensity. A single, intense day of effort may provide short-term results, but it rarely leads to sustainable change. Long-term achievement comes from repeated action over time. Habits compound and small victories accumulate. For instance, reading just 10 pages a day may seem insignificant, but over a year, it results in multiple books read and knowledge acquired. Practicing a skill for 20 minutes daily leads to mastery far more effectively than sporadic marathon sessions. Laziness often thrives when we seek perfection or expect immediate results. Focusing on small, steady steps reduces pressure and allows progress to happen naturally, creating momentum that feels almost effortless. One of the key psychological principles behind small steps is the Zeigarnik effect, which suggests that the brain remembers incomplete tasks and experiences tension until they are completed. By completing small steps consistently, you not only reduce mental clutter, but also train your mind to associate progress with satisfaction rather than stress. Even minor accomplishments trigger the release of dopamine, a neurotransmitter that reinforces motivation. Over time, this consistent reinforcement strengthens neural pathways associated with discipline, making it easier to act even when energy is low. Breaking work into smaller steps also improves focus and clarity. Large tasks often appear chaotic because the brain struggles to process the full scope of work at once. When a project is divided into components, each step becomes clear, actionable, and measurable. This clarity reduces decision fatigue and helps maintain concentration. Instead of asking, "Where do I start?" you can focus on one concrete action, which eliminates mental barriers and encourages momentum. Laziness often emerges from ambiguity and indecision. Structured, incremental steps counteract this by providing a clear roadmap. Small steps also allow for experimentation and learning without the fear of failure. When the stakes are high, inaction becomes tempting. Breaking work into manageable portions creates a safe space to try, make mistakes, and adjust. Each step becomes an opportunity to learn and refine methods, which gradually increases confidence and competence. Laziness is often a mask for fear, the fear of failure, of judgment, or of inadequacy. By starting small, the perceived risk decreases, and action becomes psychologically safer, which encourages engagement and growth. Accountability is easier when action is incremental. Large goals can feel abstract and distant, making it easy to justify delay. Small, consistent steps provide frequent markers of progress. They allow for daily reflection on what has been accomplished, which reinforces commitment. This approach shifts focus from the intimidating magnitude of the goal to the tangible, achievable actions required to reach it. Laziness loses power when every day includes concrete steps, because progress becomes visible and measurable, motivating continued effort. Consistency also builds discipline and resilience. Discipline is not an innate trait, it is cultivated through repeated practice. Small steps practiced daily create structure and predictability, training the mind and body to respond automatically. Laziness often emerges from inconsistency, the habit of starting and stopping. Regular, incremental effort counteracts this pattern, creating a rhythm where action becomes the default response rather than a conscious struggle. Over time, the act of doing, even when unmotivated, becomes natural because the habit has been ingrained. Small, consistent steps align with the concept of compound effect. Tiny actions may seem negligible at first, but when repeated, they produce results far beyond initial expectations. Saving a small amount of money daily accumulates into significant wealth. Practicing a skill briefly each day leads to mastery. Completing a few minutes of focused work repeatedly results in meaningful productivity. Laziness often blinds us to this cumulative power because immediate results are invisible. Focusing on small steps shifts attention from instant gratification to long-term growth, creating a mindset where action, not delay, becomes the natural choice. By concentrating on small, consistent steps, you create a framework where effort is sustainable, progress is visible, and motivation is internally reinforced. Laziness is no longer a barrier because action is structured, achievable, and inherently rewarding. Each small step is a building block toward larger success, and momentum grows as these blocks accumulate. This approach is not only practical but transformative, turning incremental efforts into powerful, lasting change. Inaction has a cost that is often invisible at first, but accumulates relentlessly over time. Laziness thrives in the present moment because its consequences are delayed, hidden, or abstract. The human mind tends to prioritize immediate comfort over long-term benefit, which makes procrastination feel safe and harmless. Yet, every moment of inaction has tangible consequences for growth, opportunity, and fulfillment. Every decision to delay action, to ignore responsibility, or to avoid effort is essentially a choice to surrender potential. The true cost of laziness is measured not just in what is left undone today, but in what is lost tomorrow because of what was neglected yesterday. The cost of inaction manifests in multiple dimensions: personal growth, professional development, relationships, and emotional well-being. On a personal level, delaying action stalls skill development and knowledge acquisition. Time is finite, and every opportunity to learn, practice, or improve that is postponed diminishes future potential. A skill not practiced today cannot be mastered tomorrow. A book not read, an exercise not performed, a problem not solved. All these small delays accumulate, creating gaps that widen over time. Laziness disguises these losses because they are not immediately visible, but the accumulation is inexorable. In the professional context, inaction can be even more costly. Every delayed decision, unfinished project, or missed opportunity creates setbacks that compound in the workplace or business environment. Opportunities are rarely static, they move, evolve, or vanish. Hesitation allows competitors, peers, or circumstances to advance while you remain stagnant. Those who act decisively, even imperfectly, gain experience, visibility, and momentum. Those who delay are left behind, not because of lack of talent, but because action is always more valuable than perfect planning. Laziness erodes competitiveness and potential success, often leaving regret as the only evidence of lost opportunities. Inaction also affects relationships. Laziness in effort, communication, or support weakens connections. Relationships require consistent attention and investment. Delaying a difficult conversation, failing to express gratitude, or avoiding emotional labor can gradually erode trust and intimacy. The human connection is fragile. Small neglects compounded over time can create emotional distance that is difficult, if not impossible, to repair. Laziness in this domain not only affects others, but also damages one's own sense of integrity and responsibility. The cost is not just relational, it is moral and emotional, undermining self-respect and confidence. Procrastination and avoidance also have psychological costs. Inaction creates stress, anxiety, and guilt, even if it is not immediately apparent. The mind subconsciously tracks tasks left undone and decisions postponed, creating mental clutter. This internal tension drains energy, reduces focus, and saps motivation, creating a self-reinforcing cycle where laziness breeds more laziness. Every avoided task is a seed of stress that grows silently, and over time, this accumulation can affect mental clarity, emotional stability, and overall well-being. Financial costs are another tangible consequence of inaction. Delayed investments, neglected budgeting, ignored opportunities for income, or postponed career decisions can have compounding effects. Small inactions today, like failing to save, learn new skills, or negotiate effectively, can translate into lost wealth or diminished financial independence decades later. Time amplifies the cost of delay. The longer one waits, the greater the opportunity loss. Laziness disguises this reality because the immediate discomfort of action feels greater than the abstract benefit, even though the long-term cost is far higher. Inaction also prevents the realization of potential and dreams. Laziness substitutes comfort for ambition, and in doing so, it narrows life's possibilities. Each postponed effort is a life not fully lived, a chance not taken, and a vision unrealized. Dreams require consistent effort and repeated action. Without it, they remain intangible ideas, admired but never actualized. Cost is profound because it is irreversible. Time spent in inaction can never be reclaimed, and the gap between who you are and who you could have been widens steadily with each delay. The cumulative effect of inaction demonstrates a critical principle. Inaction compounds faster than action in its cost to a life well lived. Action produces results that can be corrected, refined, or expanded. Inaction produces losses that are often permanent or require exponentially greater effort to recover. By failing to act, you not only postpone success, but also forfeit growth, opportunity, and self-respect. Laziness is seductive precisely because it masks these costs, but awareness of the cumulative consequences creates urgency. the realization that every small delay subtracts from future possibilities can transform the mindset from passive avoidance to active pursuit. Recognizing the cost of inaction shifts focus from short-term discomfort to long-term consequence. It reframes tasks from burdens to necessary steps to protect and maximize potential. Laziness is no longer a neutral choice. It becomes a calculated surrender. Understanding these costs fosters deliberate action, accountability, and persistence. Every step forward, no matter how small, is a safeguard against loss, a reclaiming of time, and an investment in the life you truly want. Empowerment and ownership are fundamental to overcoming laziness because they shift responsibility from external factors to personal choice. Laziness often thrives when we perceive ourselves as passive participants in life, waiting for motivation, permission, or favorable circumstances to act. This mindset externalizes control, placing power in the hands of conditions, other people, or luck. When we take ownership, we reclaim control over our actions and outcomes. Ownership is not just doing what is required, it is an intentional decision to commit fully to the tasks, responsibilities, and goals that shape our life. It transforms action from obligation into agency, and agency fuels motivation, persistence, and growth. Taking ownership begins with recognizing that you are responsible for your results. This means acknowledging that procrastination, avoidance, or delays are not caused by circumstances, but by your choices in response to them. Every decision to act or not act shapes your life trajectory. Laziness thrives in a mindset that attributes failure to outside forces. Yet people who take ownership understand that while they cannot control every situation, they can control how they respond. This perspective empowers individuals to act decisively, make adjustments when necessary, and continuously move toward their goals without waiting for external validation or ideal conditions. Empowerment also involves choosing action over comfort. Laziness exploits the natural human preference for immediate comfort, allowing avoidance to feel rewarding in the moment. Ownership counters this by reframing effort as a source of empowerment rather than a burden. Every action taken, no matter how small, reinforces the idea that you are in control and capable of shaping outcomes. This mindset transforms work from something done reluctantly to something embraced intentionally, creating momentum and confidence. By consistently choosing action, the mind begins to associate effort with growth, autonomy, and self-reliance, rather than with stress or punishment. Ownership encourages self-discipline and accountability. When you accept full responsibility for your work and results, you no longer rely on motivation alone to act. Discipline is cultivated through repeated, intentional action, and it thrives when personal accountability is recognized as non-negotiable. Laziness weakens when every choice is framed as a conscious decision to honor your commitments and priorities. Accountability can be internalized through reflection, tracking progress, and setting measurable goals. By evaluating your actions honestly and consistently, you reinforce ownership, making inaction less likely because it becomes a visible choice rather than a default state. Empowerment also involves embracing challenges and uncertainty. Laziness often emerges from fear, the fear of failure, criticism, or discomfort. Ownership shifts the focus from fear to responsibility. When you accept that your actions are your responsibility, challenges are reframed as opportunities to exercise control, problem solving, and growth. Uncertainty becomes manageable because you focus on what you can influence rather than what you cannot. This mindset fosters courage, resilience, and creativity, turning potential obstacles into arenas for learning and improvement rather than excuses for delay. Taking ownership strengthens intrinsic motivation, the internal drive to act because it matters to you personally, not because of external pressure or reward. Intrinsic motivation is far more sustainable than extrinsic motivation because it is rooted in personal values, purpose, and agency. Laziness cannot survive in the presence of internalized responsibility because the individual becomes motivated by a sense of duty to themselves and their goals. Every completed task reinforces competence, autonomy, and progress, creating a cycle of motivation that is self-sustaining and resilient to temporary setbacks. Ownership also empowers decision-making. Laziness often paralyzes people when faced with multiple options, fearing mistakes or judgment. When you take ownership, decision-making becomes a tool of empowerment rather than a source of stress. Every choice is framed as an opportunity to act intentionally, gain experience, and learn from results. Even mistakes are reframed as lessons because responsibility is paired with agency, the ability to correct, adjust, and improve. Laziness loses its hold because the individual is no longer waiting for conditions to be perfect. They act decisively within the scope of their influence. Empowerment and ownership create a sense of mastery and fulfillment. Acting intentionally and consistently fosters confidence, competence, and independence. Each step taken reinforces the idea that life is shaped by choices and effort, not chance. Laziness, which thrives on passivity and avoidance, cannot persist when individuals recognize that their actions directly influence outcomes. By embracing ownership, you become the architect of your progress, the driver of your goals, and the curator of your growth. Action becomes purposeful, deliberate, and self-reinforcing, while laziness is marginalized as a conscious choice rather than a habitual state. Ownership transforms the mindset from one of reactive living to proactive engagement. Every task, no matter how small, becomes an expression of agency. Laziness loses its power because the individual no longer waits for inspiration or permission. They act because they understand that their life, their results, and their growth depend on their choices. Empowerment through ownership is the bridge between intention and action, turning potential into achievement and effort into progress. It creates a life where work is embraced with responsibility, challenges are welcomed with courage, and action is driven by personal accountability rather than external compulsion.